Here's your help video for quiz 5.05. Glad you are here. Alright, so we start off with our need to know info. From the very first unit this year, we talked about the segment addition postulate. And basically, you can just add two pieces of the segment to get the whole thing. So, we're going to have to remember that when we get into our problems. We're also going to have to remember the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. I said that backwards, but it doesn't matter. Where c has to be the hypotenuse. And y'all remember, you use the Pythagorean theorem anytime you have a right triangle where you know two sides, but you're missing the third side length. That's when you use Pythagorean theorem. And it is on your formula sheet. And also on your formula sheet, you might need some volume formulas or some area. I don't exactly remember, but you definitely need your formula sheet. I think circumference maybe. So here we go. Let's jump right in. What is the distance to the Earth's horizon from point P? Okay, so first of all, we have to kind of understand that horizon, it's always going to form a 90-degree angle. So we're going to have a right triangle here because the horizon is always perpendicular to where you're standing or whatnot. So I'm not explaining that very well. Have you guys ever stood on the beach? This is you on the beach, and here's the pretty waves, woo! And you look out at the horizon. That is perpendicular. That's 90 degrees. You're not looking up at the sky. You're not looking down at the waves. You are looking out at the horizon. Still don't know if that was a great explanation, but take my word for it. That is going to create a 90-degree angle. So what we have here is we have this right triangle. We know that this side is x. We know that this side is 3,959. And to get this side, the radius here is 3,959. But we also have an extra 3.1 miles. So to get the total length, we have to use that segment addition postulate, and we have to add those two values together. So we're going to take our radius, 3,959, and we're going to add 3.1 to it. And so this whole length of the triangle is going to be 3,962.1. Now we can use Pythagorean theorem. Remember, that's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And you just have to make sure that the c is always the hypotenuse. So that value has to go in for c. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug things in. I don't know why I wrote a again. Let me plug in, let's do x squared plus 3,959 squared equals c squared. All right, so we got some calculator work going on here. I'm just typing it all in my calculator and writing down these ginormous numbers. All right. And now we're trying to solve the equation for x. We're trying to figure out what x is, which means that I need to get rid of this number right here. Since I'm adding it, the inverse operation is to subtract it. So I'm going to subtract that in my calculator. And I get x squared equals this. And then I need to solve for x. And right now it says x squared. I need to get rid of that square. The inverse or opposite of squaring is square rooting. So the square and the square root will cancel. And then we'll just type in the square root of that number. And I got approximately 156.70165, blah, blah, blah. And if we look up here, it says round your final answer to the nearest tenth. Well, remember, 10 has 1 0, so we want to go 1 decimal place. Look at the number behind it, and that 0 keeps it the same. So for our OHS answer, it's going to be 156.7 miles. That's this distance right here. All right, we have another problem very similar to it. A mountain climber is at an altitude of 2.9 miles above the Earth's surface. So this is 2.9 miles above the Earth. From the climber's viewpoint, what is the distance to the horizon? So again, we're looking for x. We know that's a 90-degree angle. And yeah, so let's do it. We have this right triangle again. And we know two sides of the right triangle, so we have to use Pythagorean theorem to find the other side length. Don't forget about your segment addition postulate. To get that side of the right triangle, you have to add those two pieces together to get this full hypotenuse, or this full length right here. All right, so we know this side is c. The rest we can just plug in. So I'm going to say x squared plus 3,959 squared equals 3,961.9 squared. And then go ahead and do some math. So I just took my calculator and I squared both of those numbers. And now I need to solve it for x. So I need to get rid of this number. And since I'm adding, the opposite would be to subtract it. And so I get this. And then I still need to get the x by itself. Right now it's being squared. The inverse or the opposite is to square root it. The square and the square root will cancel. And I got a really big number. So I got approximately 3,758.89. I'm going to check myself. I'm thinking that this is not the right answer, so I'm going to check myself. I think I have a calculator error, and these numbers are so giant that it's really easy to make a calculator error. So I'm going to show you how I actually do it. That's a little bit simpler maybe. You might think it's simpler. If I know that I want to solve, let's say this one we want to solve for a squared. So I'm going to go ahead and just take my formula, and I'm going to solve it for a squared. So I'm going to subtract b squared from each side. And then to get the a by itself, I would square root it. So a equals the square root of c squared minus b squared. This is going to make your calculating a lot easier. So if I wanted to do it this way, I would type in my calculator in one step, the square root of c squared, which is 3,961.9 squared, minus b squared, which is 3,959 squared. So let me pull up my calculator. So I'm just going to check my work by typing it all in one step. So 3,961 point... where'd my calculator go? Oh, here it is. 0.9 squared minus 3,959 squared. Okay, so I definitely made a calculating error somewhere. I knew that was a little bit crazy. So my actual answer is 151.5605, and it says round your final answer to the nearest tenth. So 151, tenth is one decimal place. So we look at that 5. The 6 behind it actually makes that go up to a 6. So 151.6. So ignore this part. Yucky, yucky, yucky. Let me actually get rid of all that. Oh, this is the worst help video ever. Let's do one more. Maybe I'll get it right this time. A person standing at the top of Mount something would be approximately 4.3 miles high. The radius of the Earth is 3,959 miles. What is the distance to the horizon from this point? Okay, it doesn't give us the picture, but y'all, we've used the same picture on the last few problems, so we can basically just fill in the picture with what we know. We know the height here, if he's on top of the mountain, is 4.3. So let's go ahead and do our segment addition to fill in all the sides of this right triangle. This side's x, this 3,959. And if I add those two together, I get 3,963.3. And I'm going to go ahead and take my Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and I'm going to go ahead and solve for a, just like I did on the last problem so I don't make any crazy calculating errors. So I'm going to subtract b squared on each side, and then I'm going to square root it. Basically, I'm solving the equation, but I'm just solving it with letters before I put my numbers in. So now I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to substitute my numbers in. My c has to be across from the 90-degree angle, so I'm going to plug in 3,963.3 squared minus my b, 3,959 squared, and I'm going to go to my calculator and type it in. So the square root of 3,963.3 squared minus that squared equals 184.56. And it says to round our answer to the nearest tenth. So that's one decimal place. Oops, let me pull that back up. So again, I look at the number behind it. It's a 6. That's going to make that 5 go up to a 6. So 184.6 miles. All right. A cylinder-shaped water tank is 160 centimeters tall and measures 87.93 centimeters around. What is the volume of the water tank? Enter your answer as a decimal in the box and use 3.14 for pi. So this is just an example of a water heater. It says that it's a cylinder-shaped water tank, so I just wanted to put a picture in there. So it tells us the height and the measurement around, but we want to know the volume. Okay? So when they say the measurement around, think about this. We know that this is a circle, right? And if we want to find the distance around the circle, we're going to have to use the circumference of the circle. So circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius. And the measurement around is the circumference. So I'm going to plug that in for letter C. And I want to solve this for the radius. So I'm going to divide each side by 2 pi. So I'm going to take my calculator and I'm going to do 87.92 divided by 2 pi, which is, it says use 3.14 for pi. So I got that the radius equals 14. Once I know the radius, then I can go back and plug it in to get the volume. Because volume equals pi times radius squared times height. I know that the height is 160, and now I know the radius is 14. I'm going to substitute everything in. I'm going to type it in my calculator. And that leaves me with the volume is this. Volume is 98,470.4, and that's always units cubed for volume. All right, the last one. A restaurant owner has a large trash container in the shape of a rectangular prism with the height of 4, the base that is 4 feet wide and 6 feet long. So I know this isn't to scale, but that would be 4, that would be 4, and this would be 6. During a 1-month period, the container needs to be emptied 4 times. How many cubic feet of trash were taken away? All right, so it doesn't say specifically volume, but if you're talking cubic feet, remember volume is units cubed. We need to find the volume here. So we're going to take our length times width times height to get the volume. So 6 times 4 equals 96. That's 96 cubic feet for 1 load, but we want to take away 4 loads. So we're just going to multiply that by 4. And so they're taking away 384 cubic feet of trash. All right, y'all, good luck on this quiz.